So when I was growing up in Ohio, people would come every summer and witness to the congregation and let me know. I was never one of those people who ever did that. So I have a long history of stuff that I was supposed to have done and haven't done, so you get it all done right now. So basically, I have this to say for doing what I'm doing right now, and that is, I don't know how about you, but I always hated doing tests in school. I hated doing papers. I absolutely despised them. And unfortunately, sometime when I was in college, I started to realize that, oh dear, I actually did learn more by being forced to put my thoughts on paper and organize them and actually justify my arguments. And I actually did study and learn more by getting ready for a test. So this is sort of the same thing. You sit there and you have to actually really look at the scriptures. You have to actually really look at it and do some research. It's a very good exercise, terrifying, but a good exercise nonetheless. Over my life, I have been living a very nice life, receiving gifts that have made it very good. I just stumble upon things. It's like, I stumbled on my college. I walked on the campus and said, oh, this is so nice. I saw a miracle, I got in. I stumbled into my major. I basically stumbled into my husband. It's really been great. I've gotten some very good gifts from God. I also learned very early in life that the gifts that I asked for are not usually the best. I would have to say the worst Christmas of my life was in 3rd grade, when a friend of mine and I decided that we would create the perfect wish list for Christmas. And I don't have any idea how many things were on it, but I basically got everything that I asked for, and I have never been more disappointed in my life. My parents always chose something spectacular that I never thought of, didn't know existed, and it was always so much better. And I have never created a Christmas list since then. It drives my husband crazy, but I get great gifts, and I would never think to ask for most of them. There are occasions when I get things that I wish I hadn't received, but by and large, it just worked out really well for me. So as you can tell, getting gifts that we didn't ask for but are better than we asked for has really good Christian metaphors here going. So by doing this, I have learned to do what some people in our culture today call it listening to the universe. Perhaps you could also call it listening to the still small voice. Anyway, I subscribe to a daily devotional, and for the past few months, there have been repeated things about love being an action rather than a fleeting, ephemeral emotion. Or better yet, than what I said yesterday while I was writing this, about how God gives us whatever gifts we need to fulfill His purpose. You'll have to let me know whether that was for today or not. The reason I bring up love is in relation to today's gospel. Love your enemies, forgive, and you will be forgiven, which is hard under the best of circumstances. And I don't know about you, but every time I pray the Lord's Prayer, I stumble over the idea of being forgiven as I forgive those who trespass against me, because I really hope to be forgiven a great deal more than I'm able to forgive other people. I used to watch VeggieTales. This is actually all connected, I promise. Hope always yells at me for like taking too long to get to the point of connecting all the dots, but I do promise it does eventually connect. So I used to watch VeggieTales. It's just a little cartoon about talking vegetables, and I love them. They're for kids, and I love them. There's fun songs, humor, and then every once in a while a very good lesson that I had not even remotely seen coming. And in their version of the story of Joseph, I learned that that's how the Israelites ended up in Israel, in Egypt, where Moses had to get them out of. I had never really figured out that that's how they actually ended up there in the first place. And God's gifts can be kind of underwhelming, like gifts of administration and organization. Definitely not flashy gifts. Apparently Joseph was an organizer, or in the words of VeggieTales, you should see his sock drawer. And yet, that underwhelming gift, I mean, when was the last time you actually admired somebody who had the ability to organize anything, least of all software? We don't. You might be thankful someone alphabetized the list, or put papers in folders, or cleaned out the closets, but we fail to admire the genius behind doing such ordinary and mundane chores that clearly anyone can do. It's just that no one else does. These are gifts that call for multiple other gifts, like humility, so that even though you get little to no acknowledgement, and certainly no awe, you keep doing it anyway. This would be a great time to say, thank you, Nancy, thank you, Gwen. Great shout out from all the things that you do and get little recognition for. And that's heaven knows all the people I don't even know the names of who've been volunteering to organize the thrift shop these days. But that was one of the gifts that God gave and used to get Joseph into a position to save Israel. However, that gift in itself was, or would have been, insufficient on its own. The only way for it to come together was for Joseph to be able to forgive horrible, horrible transgressions. A little aside here, I was once in the position of Joseph's brothers. I have a cousin. She is blonde, blue-eyed, gorgeous, amazing voice, and something that no one ever bothered to tell me when I was growing up. Extremely kind. She was always being oohed and awed over by everyone, and yes, I was tremendously jealous. She was my own personal Joseph. You know, it's like, isn't she wonderful? Isn't she gorgeous? It's like, you hear this enough and you just like never want to hear it again. So I despised her before I ever met her. I just really never wanted to hear about her ever again. Not surprisingly, once I actually met this cousin, she really is wonderful. She's extremely nice and very beautiful. So it was pretty easy for me to, quote, forgive her for being so nice that everyone loved her. Reconciliation, or another version of forgiveness, was easy, especially since I was the one who was in the wrong. I hope she doesn't hear this, but if she does, she is really nice and will probably laugh and forgive me for being a bratty kid. You see, my own personal Joseph here. That Joseph was able to forgive and reconcile with his brothers is a different level of forgiveness. But that is the level we are told to go to for the Sermon on the Plain. By the way, quick show of hands here. Who has heard of the Sermon on the Plain? Yeah, me neither. Apparently, Jesus came down from the Sermon on High, where he gave the Beatitudes, and he came down to a plain, and then he gave that little lesson that we got today. So that those lessons about how to treat and forgive those who don't forgive you and who treat you badly, that's all the Sermon on the Plain. So, anyhow, as you have probably heard, South Africa has been trying to get around the problem of vengeance and the inability of people in general to forgive with its Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Thank you for having ministers like Desmond Tutu to help lead an entire nation in ways of Christian forgiveness. We don't really know if it's going to be permanently successful. I know that they have issues, but it is certainly keeping the country more peaceful and successful than any poli-sci person could ever have expected. And nonetheless, God is asking through Jesus for us to do it all without the truth part. The truth part is where you admit that you've done something wrong, and then the other person forgives you. But we're supposed to do the forgiving without the other person ever admitting they did something wrong. In the Sermons at Work series that the Episcopal Church puts out for people leading services, the one for today talks about reciprocity and how God has a different take on reciprocity when it comes to all the good stuff in life, including forgiveness. So, as we think about how we're going to live out the gospel message today, and we need to forgive someone who will not admit wrongdoing or doesn't even see that they've done something wrong that needs forgiveness in the first place, you can think about how God has inverted the scales of reciprocity, the last shall be first, etc. Or you can think about how we are so far behind on the reciprocity scales with God that it doesn't even bear thinking about. And just go ahead